Good evening. It is 1 minute to 8 on Saturday evening, and today I got time to write chapter 6 of my book, so I'm going to get on and read chapter 6. Okay, here we go. They say that when a child is born bereft of certain senses, that their others develop stronger to balance out the set. Yet there's no thesis on what happens to children born with additional genetic makeup. Some might think that that child has an unfair advantage in life, or that they'd have some superpower or be able to see the world differently, a unique vision. Religious folk might count it as a blessing from God that this chosen one has been sent to earth on some groundbreaking mission. Elspeth and Graham never really considered these schools of thought. To them, their daughter was their daughter. She'd been conceived out of the happiest, purest love, and she'd continue to live her life surrounded by this warmth. Every parent naturally wants to wrap their child up in cotton wool to protect it from the harsh, cruel realities and cold truths of modern life, and for the Whites it was no different. Yet just as Graham had grown up without his real birth mother, Violet would have to discover certain paths for herself, and only when she was released from this bubble of security and permitted to roam freely and independently would this instinctively come. Violet was a special soul. Her parents knew this, her doctors knew this, future friends, teachers, colleagues, partners would know this, but for Violet she'd never know this, at least no one would ever tell her. Only when she realised and pieced the puzzle together herself would the smoke clear from her eyes and enable her to see the bigger picture for what it really was and understand her place in this troubled world. The candles danced in the breeze that blew in from the patio door. There were 7 of them in total, thick as fingers, erect as street lamps, and pink as wild flamingos. Balloons defied gravity, floating from the ceiling with seahorse bobbing rubber tails, and the carpet was awash with tiny hearts, glittered stars, and glossy ribbons and wrapping paper, the kind that never tears regardless of the angle you rip it from. It was Violet's birthday, and there were exactly 1 guest for each exact year she'd been on the earth. Elspeth would mark the first, Graham second, Olive and George, and of course 3 and 4, Harry and Judith, friends from the local elementary school, 5 and 6, and the birthday girl herself, 7. It was a typically pink affair, just as you'd expect from a 7-year-old. A pink cake, pink placemats, and pink lemonade, which would no doubt be drowned with whatever was sloshing about in old George's hip flask at the time. George wasn't an alcoholic, it was just his generation. Good times for him used to mean a soiree of tasselled flapper dancers, slick tuxedos, even slicker side partings, and plenty of liquor to fire the soul and warm the heart, as he'd say. Harry and Judith wriggled in their seats and pulled at the elastic on their hats so it snapped against their chins. They laughed at the brief hit of pain before rubbing the slight burn and doing it all again. To say these children were fidgets was an understatement. Olive knelt with a camera as everyone cheesed for the scrapbook. The candles were blown out and the cake was sliced. The knife sank through the icing like fingers skidding through snow. After a few hysterical rounds of musical chairs and reruns of Disney films, both the kids and adults were exhausted. George was still in high spirits, though, and coincidentally his hip flask was low. A sudden gust of wind slammed the patio door shut as a local cat hissed at the unexpected noise. In the kitchen, Elspeth and Graham were busy binning paper plates and discussing how to politely send their guests home without looking rude or improper. Graham had just about finished plotting a convincing escape route when there was a loud knock at the door, which echoed through the tunnelling house, so precise in clarity, like it was being picked up on a tin can phone. The kids leapt up onto the sofa and peered at the man in the porchway. 3 heads bobbed up and down behind the window ledge. like excitable fish catching air. Harry and Judith were clearly still high on the E numbers required to make that plain sponge cake garishly pink, yet Violet seemed unusually calm. She stopped bobbing and sank down into the middle seat of the three-piece suite. She stared straight ahead and dangled her legs off the edge. Her small face wrinkled and tensed as the knocking grew louder and more urgent. She looked like she'd seen a ghost, or at least something haunting from her past. Sensing the affluent neighbourhood from the amount of A-Class 5 Series and Vorsprung vehicles which lined the drives, and the lively atmosphere from the solitary balloon held down by a ceramic garden frog, the man tried the door and let himself in. He hung his wax jacket up on the brass 12 pegs and left his brogues in unison with the rest of the laces, buckles and eyelets. He peeked his head through the living room door and Violet shot off the sofa to hide behind her mother's apron in the kitchen. She thought she'd broke free from this nightmare 7 years ago, but here he was, piercing as a whistle, eyeing up her birthday cake in the family living room. "Anyone home?" the man joked as Olive and George stirred from an afternoon catnap. "Will!" Graham gestured with an open hand. "Great to see you." He sat the man down before calling to his wife in the kitchen. "Ellie, put the kettle on. Will Quinn stopped by." A polished metal teaspoon fell to the kitchen tiles, and both Elspeth and Violet knelt to pick it up. Their eyes met at oven level, and although their faces were ages and lives apart, their expressions mirrored to perfection. Dr. Quinn? What did he want? So there we have chapter 6 of my novel. It's going very well, but I kind of need to get some direction flowing, because I don't really know what's going to happen next. So that kind of needs to be figured out. Tomorrow is 1 week exactly until my marathon, which I am excited about, but also obviously quite anxious about. But I'm very confident in the fact that I've done all the necessary training. And I think that, I've been doing some good training runs and logging some good times. So I think that it will go quite well. Anyway, that's all for now, because it's coming up to 8 minutes. So this is going to take ages to upload. So I will say keep tuned for the next chapter.